I once saw this clip of a comedian that described different responses that we have when we encounter bees. There's the wafters who flail their arms around and kind of make bees matrix dodge their hands so that they fly away. And then there's the stand-stillers who stay completely still and calm until the bee loses interest and flies away. Now, I'm a stand-stiller. I'm a firm believer in it, and I've been doing it my whole life. But the problem is my girlfriend is a wafter, and she starts wafting all these bees away from her and onto me, and I'm standing still and just collecting all these bees. It's not a good mix. But you know, there's a different response that I saw one of our teenagers once have with a bee. We went to the dunes by Bethel's with some of our teenagers a couple of years ago, and if you've ever been to those dunes by Bethel's, there's these vast areas of sand that oftentimes a rogue bee will get lost in, and a lot of times they dehydrate and die. If you look down in the sand, you'll often find like a bee that has not made it out, never found their way out. And when this teenager encountered a bee in those dunes, she did something different. She didn't waft or stand still. She caught it in her hand, and she took her water bottle and she started giving it water from her water bottle. She started restoring the bee. But not just that, she walked with this bee for the rest of the way, all the way to the lake. And then when she got to the lake, she did something with it in the water, like gave her more water, or I don't know, little bee compression CPR, something. She revived this bee until it was strong enough to fly away on its own. It was a response I had never seen anybody give a bee before, and to this day it has stuck with me. You know, I see bees as something bad and dangerous that can sting me, but she saw a bee as something good and worth restoring. And that's the kind of eyes that I want to have for all of God's creation. You know, for the next few weeks, we're going to be looking at different psalms, which are parts of the Bible that are prayers, or personal prayers that people had for God. And there's three different kinds of these prayers that we want to look at. Some that help us focus on God, orient our focus towards the goodness of God. What are the prayers that we have when our lives are disrupted? And what are the prayers that we can have when after the disruption, to help us refocus to God? So we've got focus, disruption, and refocus. And today I've been reading through Psalm 8, which is a prayer of focus. It helps point our focus to the goodness of God. But this prayer is all about how the person saw the goodness of God in creation and the world around him. And I think that's what it does. When we look at God and his goodness, we begin to have his eyes to see his goodness in creation and in people around us. In fact, it says this in verse 6, it says, "You made them rulers over the works of your hands. You put everything under their feet, all flocks and herds, and the animals of the wild, and the birds in the sky, and the fish in the sea, and all that swim in the path of the seas. Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all of the earth." And I love that when we point our focus towards God's goodness, we begin to have his eyes to see the goodness of God, to see the goodness in each other, to see the goodness of his creation, and want to take care of those things. We want to restore those things, revive the relationships that are hurting, restore the creation that needs our care and protection. This is what it means to look at God and to focus on God, is to take that in how we see and how we act in the goodness of the world around us. So I have two reflection questions for you this week. And the first one is, what is an area in your life that you want to see goodness in? What's something that you want to see God's goodness in? It can be a relationship. It can be somebody that you're struggling with in your bubble. It can even be how you see your work in your school, or maybe how you look at some of your creative projects. But what is an area you want to see the goodness of God in? And the second reflection I want you guys to have is, what can you do this week that will help you see and give space for God's goodness? What is something you can do this week to make space to see God's goodness this week?